Tommy Rodriguez was staring at the eviction notice taped to his apartment door, his hands shaking as he read the words he'd been dreading for months. Final notice: 30 days to vacate premises. At 22 years old, Tommy was about to lose the only home he'd ever known. The tiny two-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, where his grandfather Manuel had raised him since he was 12 years old. Manuel had died 3 months ago, leaving Tommy with nothing but debt and a heart full of memories. Tommy pushed open the apartment door and looked around the place that had been his sanctuary for the past 10 years. The worn furniture that Manuel had bought secondhand from thrift stores. The kitchen table where they'd shared countless meals of rice and beans. The couch where Manuel would fall asleep after working double shifts as a janitor at the office building downtown. Tommy had always known they were poor. He'd grown up wearing secondhand clothes, eating generic brand food, and watching his grandfather work himself to exhaustion just to keep the lights on. But Manuel had taught Tommy that poverty was temporary, dignity was forever. Mijo, Manuel would say in his thick Guatemalan accent, we may not have much money, but we have something more valuable. We have each other, and we have our honor. Now Manuel was gone, and Tommy was truly alone. The funeral had cost Tommy his entire savings, $847 that he'd managed to put away from his job at a local grocery store. The medical bills from Manuel's final illness had drained what little money they had. The apartment, which Tommy discovered had been mortgaged to pay for Tommy's education, was now in foreclosure. Tommy had 30 days to pack up his grandfather's belongings and find somewhere else to live. But what Tommy was about to discover while packing those belongings would reveal that everything he believed about his family, his past, and his future was about to change in the most extraordinary way possible. If this story truly touches your heart, let it speak for you. Like this video, subscribe to be part of our journey, and share your feelings in the comments. To understand how shocking Tommy's discovery would be, you need to understand the life he'd lived with his grandfather. Tommy's parents, Maria and Carlos Rodriguez, had died in a car accident when Tommy was 12 years old. With no other family in America, Tommy went to live with his grandfather Manuel, who had immigrated to the United States from Guatemala 20 years earlier. Manuel was 68 years old when he suddenly found himself responsible for raising a grieving pre-teenager. He worked as a night janitor at a Manhattan office building, earning $12 an hour for backbreaking labor that kept him away from home from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day. During the day, Manuel would sleep for a few hours, then do odd jobs around the neighborhood. He cleaned apartments for elderly neighbors. He repaired appliances for people who couldn't afford professional service. He painted houses, moved furniture, and did whatever work he could find to bring in extra money. Tommy learned to take care of himself from a young age. He would get himself ready for school, make his own breakfast, and often prepare dinner for Manuel when he got home from his night shift. I'm sorry you had to grow up so fast, Mijo, Manuel would say when he found Tommy doing laundry or cleaning the apartment. It's okay, abuelo. We're a team. Despite their poverty, Manuel insisted on certain principles. Tommy had to maintain good grades in school. Tommy had to treat everyone with respect, regardless of their station in life. Tommy had to work for everything he wanted. When Tommy wanted new sneakers for basketball, Manuel made him earn the money by helping with his odd jobs. When Tommy wanted to go on a school trip, he had to save up for months from his allowance earned by doing extra chores. Money that comes easy goes easy, Manuel would explain. Money you work for, you appreciate. Manuel also insisted that Tommy learn about their family history. Your great-grandfather, my father, was a proud man in Guatemala, Manuel would tell Tommy during their evening talks. He taught me that a man's worth is not measured by what he owns, but by how he treats others. What did great-grandfather do in Guatemala? Tommy would ask. He worked hard, just like we work hard here. The most important thing is that he raised his children to have dignity and compassion. Tommy never questioned why they lived so simply when some of his classmates had much more. He never wondered why Manuel, who was clearly intelligent and hardworking, never seemed to advance beyond menial labor. Tommy assumed this was just their reality. Immigrants working hard to survive in America, grateful for the opportunity, but always struggling to make ends meet. Tommy graduated from high school with good grades and earned a partial scholarship to community college. He studied business at night while working days at the grocery store to help Manuel pay bills. Tommy's biggest dream was to eventually earn enough money to help Manuel retire from his janitor job. Someday, Abuelo, you won't have to work so hard anymore. I'm going to take care of you the way you took care of me. Manuel would smile sadly when Tommy made these promises. You already take care of me, Mijo. You give my life meaning. Tommy never understood why Manuel sometimes looks so sad when they talk about the future. He never understood why Manuel kept certain documents locked in a small box that he never let Tommy see. Tommy never realized that Manuel was carrying secrets that would change everything Tommy thought he knew about their family. Manuel's health began failing during Tommy's second year of college. At first, it was just increased fatigue and occasional shortness of breath. I'm getting old, Mijo. This is normal. But Tommy noticed Manuel struggling more with his janitorial work, coming home more exhausted, losing weight, looking frail in a way that scared Tommy. Abuelo, you need to see a doctor. Doctors are expensive. I'm fine. Tommy used his grocery store employee health insurance to get Manuel an appointment at a community clinic. The diagnosis was devastating. Congestive heart failure, complicated by diabetes and kidney problems. How long has he been sick? The doctor asked Tommy privately. I don't know. He never complained. Based on these test results, he's been declining for years. He's probably been hiding his symptoms to avoid worrying you. The doctor recommended immediate treatment that would cost thousands of dollars, even with insurance. Manuel refused. We don't have that kind of money, Mijo. We'll figure it out. We'll get loans. We'll ask for help. No, I won't leave you with debt. I've lived a good life. Tommy was furious with Manuel's stubbornness, but he couldn't change his grandfather's mind. Manuel continued working as long as he could, coming home each morning more exhausted than the day before. Tommy began working double shifts at the grocery store, desperately trying to save money for Manuel's medical care. But Manuel's condition deteriorated rapidly. In his final weeks, Manuel was confined to bed, too weak to work. Tommy stayed home to care for him, missing classes and losing income they desperately needed. During these final days, Manuel seemed to want to tell Tommy something important. Mijo, there are things about our family. Things I should have told you. Don't worry about that now. Abuelo, just rest. But you need to know about your heritage, about who you really are. Tommy thought Manuel was becoming confused due to his medications. I know who I am, Abuelo. I'm Tommy Rodriguez. I'm your grandson. That's all I need to know. Manuel died on a Tuesday morning in March, holding Tommy's hand. His last words were, "Look behind the clothes. Mijo, everything you need to know is behind the clothes." Tommy thought Manuel was delirious from pain medication. He had no idea that Manuel was giving him a clue that would change his entire life. 3 months after Manuel's funeral, Tommy was facing the reality of losing their apartment. He had spent all of his savings on funeral expenses and medical bills. Without Manuel's income, Tommy couldn't afford the rent, utilities, and grocery store job wasn't enough to cover the mortgage payments that Tommy discovered Manuel had been making on the apartment. Tommy had never known that Manuel owned the apartment. He'd assumed they were renters. But among Manuel's papers, Tommy found mortgage documents showing that Manuel had bought the apartment 15 years earlier and had been faithfully making payments ever since. Unfortunately, Manuel had taken out a second mortgage 3 years earlier to pay for Tommy's college expenses. With Manuel gone and Tommy unable to make the payments, the bank was foreclosing. Tommy had 30 days to pack up their belongings and move out. He had no idea where he would go. His grocery store job paid $11 an hour. He couldn't afford to rent even a studio apartment in New York City. Tommy began the heartbreaking process of sorting through Manuel's possessions. Most of their furniture was old and worthless. Their clothes were worn and outdated. Their kitchen appliances were ancient but functional. Tommy planned to donate most everything to charity and keep only the most sentimental items. He was packing clothes from Manuel's bedroom closet when he noticed something odd. The closet seemed shorter than it should be, given the size of the room. Tommy measured the closet interior against the exterior wall and realized there was about 3 feet of unaccounted space. He knocked on the back wall of the closet and heard a hollow sound. Tommy examined the wall more carefully and discovered what appeared to be a hidden panel. He pressed against various points on the wall until he found a section that moved slightly. After some experimentation, Tommy figured out how to slide the panel aside. Behind the panel was a space about 3 feet deep, and in that space was a large, heavy safe. Tommy stared at the safe in complete confusion. Why would his grandfather, who could barely afford groceries, have a safe hidden in their apartment? What could a poor janitor possibly need to hide? Tommy tried several combinations he thought might be significant to Manuel. Manuel's birthday, Tommy's birthday, the date Tommy's parents died. Nothing worked. Then Tommy remembered Manuel's final words. Look behind the clothes. Tommy wondered if there might be a clue among Manuel's clothing. He searched through every pocket, every jacket, every pair of pants. In the breast pocket of Manuel's only suit, the one he'd worn to church every Sunday, Tommy found a small piece of paper with numbers written on it. Tommy tried the numbers as a combination. The safe opened. What Tommy saw inside made him fall to his knees in shock. The safe was filled with things that made no sense given the life Tommy had lived with his grandfather. Stacks of cash in various currencies. Gold bars. Real gold bars, each one stamped with official markings. Jewelry that looked ancient and valuable. Loose diamonds and emeralds in small velvet bags. Bank documents from institutions in Guatemala, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands. Property deeds for land in Central America. And a thick folder of photographs and documents that would explain everything. Tommy pulled out the folder with shaking hands. The first photograph showed a much younger Manuel standing in front of a massive plantation house, wearing an expensive suit and surrounded by dozens of workers. The next photograph showed Manuel with a beautiful woman Tommy didn't recognize, both dressed in formal attire at what appeared to be a high society event. More photographs showed Manuel with government officials, business leaders, and people who were clearly wealthy and powerful. Tommy found newspaper clippings from Guatemalan newspapers, all featuring Manuel Rodriguez. The headlines were in Spanish, but Tommy could make out enough to understand that his grandfather had been a major figure in Guatemala's coffee industry. One article was dated 1995 and included a photo of Manuel cutting a ribbon at the opening of a new processing facility. The article described Manuel Rodriguez as one of Guatemala's most successful agricultural entrepreneurs and estimated his wealth at over $50 million. Tommy found legal documents showing that Manuel had owned thousands of acres of coffee plantations, processing facilities, and export businesses throughout Central America. But the most shocking discovery was a letter Manuel had written to Tommy, dated just 2 weeks before his death. The letter was in English, written in Manuel's careful handwriting. My dearest Tommy, if you are reading this, I am gone and you have found the truth about our family. I was not always a janitor. Before we came to America, I was a wealthy man in Guatemala. I owned businesses that employed thousands of people and generated millions of dollars. But wealth brought danger to our family. Your parents were killed, Tommy. It was not an accident. People who wanted to take over my businesses arranged their deaths to pressure me to sell. When I realized that you were also in danger, I made a choice. I liquidated everything I could, converted most of my wealth to gold and gems, and brought you to America. I chose to live as a poor man, so that no one would look for us, so that you could grow up safely. I worked as a janitor not because I had to, but because I wanted you to learn the value of hard work and humility before you learn about money. I wanted you to become a good man first, and a wealthy man second. Everything in this safe belongs to you now. The cash is approximately $2.3 million. The gold is worth another $8 million at current prices. The jewelry and gems are family heirlooms worth several million more. The bank accounts contain approximately $47 million. The properties in Guatemala are worth at least $30 million, if you choose to reclaim them. But more important than the money, Tommy, is what you have learned about character during our years of struggle. You learn to work hard. You learn to treat people with respect regardless of their station in life. You learn that dignity and honor are more valuable than comfort. You learn to appreciate what you have instead of taking it for granted. These lessons are worth more than all the money in this safe. Use your inheritance wisely, me, Joe. Help others the way I tried to help you. And remember that your true wealth is not what you own, but who you are. I love you forever. Abuelo Manuel. Tommy read the letter 3 times before its contents fully sank in. His grandfather hadn't been a poor immigrant struggling to survive. Manuel had been a multimillionaire who chose poverty to protect Tommy and teach him values. Tommy wasn't inheriting debt and homelessness. He was inheriting one of the largest fortunes any 22-year-old had ever received. But the most important inheritance was the character Manuel had built in him during their years of struggle. Tommy's first instinct was to call someone and share the incredible news. But he realized he didn't have anyone to call. His only family had been Manuel, and Manuel was gone. His co-workers at the grocery store wouldn't understand. His classmates at community college barely knew him. Tommy was alone with the most life-changing discovery imaginable. He spent the rest of the day verifying the contents of the safe. He researched the gold bars and confirmed they were authentic and valuable. He looked up the banks mentioned in Manuel's documents and confirmed the accounts existed. He used Google Earth to look at the properties in Guatemala and saw vast plantations and industrial facilities. Everything Manuel had written in his letter was true. Tommy Rodriguez, who had been facing homelessness 24 hours earlier, was now worth approximately $90 million. But the money felt surreal to Tommy. More important was understanding why Manuel had made the choices he had. Tommy researched his parents' deaths in Guatemala and found newspaper articles confirming that Carlos and Maria Rodriguez had been killed in what appeared to be a car accident, but which was suspected to be murder related to business disputes. Tommy found articles about Manuel's sudden disappearance from Guatemala, which had caused major disruptions in the country's coffee industry. Tommy realized that Manuel had given up an empire to save his life, had lived in poverty for 10 years to keep Tommy safe, had worked exhausting manual labor jobs where he could have lived in luxury, all to teach Tommy lessons that couldn't be learned with money. Tommy's next decision would define who he had become through Manuel's sacrifice. He could have started living lavishly immediately. Instead, Tommy finished packing up their apartment. He used some of the cash to pay off the mortgage and keep their home. But he continued working at the grocery store. He continued attending community college. He continued living simply, just as Manuel had taught him. Tommy wanted to prove to himself that he had learned Manuel's lessons before he changed his lifestyle. Over the next 6 months, Tommy gradually integrated his inheritance into his life while maintaining the values Manuel had taught him. His first major purchase was paying off the medical debt from Manuel's final illness. His second purchase was establishing a scholarship fund at his community college for students from immigrant families. His third purchase was buying the office building where Manuel had worked as a janitor and giving all the custodial staff significant raises. "I want to honor a man who used to work here," Tommy told the building's previous owner. "He taught me that every job has dignity when it's done with pride." Tommy hired financial advisors to help him manage his inheritance responsibly. He learned about the businesses he had inherited in Guatemala and decided to maintain them, but with improved worker conditions and profit-sharing programs. He converted part of his wealth into a foundation focused on helping immigrant families and protecting workers' rights. But Tommy also allowed himself some personal enjoyment of his inheritance. He bought a modest house in a nice neighborhood and moved out of the tiny Bronx apartment. He purchased a reliable car to replace the subway commute. He upgraded his wardrobe from second-hand clothes to quality items. But he never forgot where he came from. Tommy completed his business degree and graduated summa cum laude. At his graduation, he gave a speech about his grandfather that brought the entire audience to tears. "My grandfather taught me that wealth without character is worthless, but character without opportunity is tragedy. He gave me both wealth and character, but more importantly, he gave me the wisdom to know the difference." Tommy's story began attracting media attention as word spread about the young millionaire who continued working at a grocery store and living modestly despite his fortune. He used the publicity to advocate for immigrant rights and worker protections. My grandfather came to this country with nothing and built everything through hard work. Tommy would tell reporters, every immigrant family deserves the same opportunities he had. If you made it all the way here, it means this story truly held you. So don't leave without showing some love. Hit like, subscribe to stay with us, and drop a comment. I'll be here, reading every word you share. 5 years after discovering his inheritance, Tommy Rodriguez has become one of the most respected young philanthropists in America. He still lives modestly, though comfortably. He expanded his foundation to operate in both the United States and Guatemala, focusing on education, worker rights, and supporting immigrant families. He returned to Guatemala to reclaim his family's properties and converted them into cooperative businesses owned partly by the workers. He established schools and medical clinics in rural communities where his family's businesses operate. Tommy learned to speak fluent Spanish and reconnected with his cultural heritage that Manuel had preserved but rarely discussed during their years of struggle. But most importantly, Tommy never forgot the lessons Manuel taught him during their poorest years. He still treats every person with respect, regardless of their job or social status. He still works hard for everything he achieves, even though he could afford to live without working. He still appreciates simple pleasures like a good meal or a comfortable home, because he remembers when those things weren't guaranteed. Tommy often speaks at schools and community centers, sharing his story and Manuel's wisdom. My grandfather could have raised me in luxury, Tommy tells audiences. Instead, he chose to raise me with struggles that would make me strong. He gave me poverty, so I would appreciate wealth. He gave me hardship, so I would value opportunity. The greatest gift wasn't the money he left me. It was the character he built in me while we had no money. Tommy keeps Manuel's work clothes in his closet as a reminder of the man who sacrificed everything to give him both wealth and wisdom. He visits Manuel's grave every month and tells him about the foundation's work, the people they've helped, and the lessons Tommy continues to learn. Thank you, Abuelo, Tommy says at each visit. Thank you for teaching me that being rich isn't about having money. It's about using whatever you have to help others. Today, the Rodriguez Foundation has helped thousands of immigrant families, provided scholarships to hundreds of students, and improved working conditions for thousands of employees. Tommy Rodriguez discovered he was worth $90 million, but he learned he was worth much more than that. He was worth the sacrifice of a grandfather who gave up luxury to teach him humility, worth the struggle that built his character, worth the love that inspired a man to choose poverty over safety, hardship over comfort, and teaching over wealth. Tommy thought he was poor until he found his grandfather safe. But he discovered that he had been rich all along, rich in love, rich in values, and rich in the kind of character that no amount of money can buy. Manuel Rodriguez hid his fortune to teach his grandson that the greatest treasures in life aren't the ones you can put in a safe. They're the ones you carry in your heart. And those treasures, once earned, can never be taken away.